finger. We're going to give this a few minutes or two to dry, and then we will do the other side. Let's turn on the other side, and we're going to do the same just as we do the front side. Look at that. Isn't that unique? After this has dried, we will then enter the air wire. Our earrings has fully dried, so we're now going to put in the air wire. So we're going to use the tip pin, and we're just going to paste the earrings. Put both of them together preferably, and we're just going to paste right through. Okay, we're going to put in the rings, and we're going to put in the air wire. Now for the second one. And this is the final completion of the plastic earrings. This is what it looks like. This is a finger tie-dye sort of painting. We're going to complement our earrings by adding a bangle. This bangle was made from just an ordinary piece of plastic tube with the same tie-dye finger painting effect. This is what it looks like. You're just gonna set a little piece of wooden stick. We're just gonna insert it into the end piece, and we're just gonna add the other end. We're going to enhance our bangle by just adding some gold rings. We're gonna start by just put in the gold rings in the joint area. Isn't this unique? Just look at this. This is the finished look of the earrings and the bangle. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. The month of July is plastic free, so I am encouraging you to reduce the use of single-use plastic.
We are doing our part to help making sure that the coronavirus doesn't spread anymore in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Our role here is just to ensure that the public being safe, and at the same time we're keeping ourselves safe. We're ensuring that each other keep at least
is on.
Everybody beware, and you better prepare. Disaster can happen anytime, anywhere.
International news sources such as CNN, BBC, or the Weather Channel are great sources of global weather news. However, you should not rely on these sources for making life and death decisions. NEMA will collaborate with the Met Office to bring you the local forecast, which will have the type of information you will need to make critical decisions. Listen to the local forecast. A message from NEMA.
You better prepare. Disaster can happen anytime, anywhere.
The symptoms of the coronavirus are similar to those of the common flu or cold.
Is on. Good afternoon and welcome to the National Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 weekly briefing for Wednesday, 23rd of September, 2020. We thank you very much for joining us for today's briefing. Of course, we continue to manage the COVID-19 pandemic here in St. Kitts and Nevis, trying our best to mitigate against the transmission of the virus. Thank you very much for partnering with us in this effort. Today we celebrate as well International Day of Sign Languages. And as you know, we have had, as part of our NEOC COVID-19 briefings, the services of Mrs. Christmas Jacobs. Extremely vital. Today is that day when the United Nations, the body, the worldwide body, has set aside to celebrate the International Day of Sign Languages, which is a unique opportunity to support and protect the linguistic identity and cultural diversity of all deaf people and other sign language users. And there are 72 million deaf people worldwide, and more than 80% of them live in developing countries. So we say a profound thank you to Mrs. Christmas Jacobs for her service, and we salute the deaf community among us and, of course, around the world on this very special day. They are a very special part of us. I would like to invite, firstly, Mr. Ernest Amory of Amory Enterprises, who will give a donation to the COVID-19 response here in St. Kitts and Nevis. He will give a donation of face masks. We will invite Mr. Samuel to receive that donation. Mr. Amory.
Good afternoon to everyone, and I'm very happy to be back to make a presentation and announcement of what we are planning to do in the next few months. What we're doing this afternoon is to make a contribution of 1,200 masks, face masks, like what I'm showing you here. These are high-quality masks that has an adjustment on the side for the ear, and also a valve so you can clean as well and reuse. It's quite washable. 400 of these masks will be donated to Nevis and 800 masks to St. Kitts. We also donating water buckets just in case they're needed at any time. We have 1,032 buckets will be needed to St. Kitts and 532 to Nevis. In addition, actually, before I say that, I should really introduce the person up here with me. I have with me two of my executives for Amory Enterprises. On my right is Ms. Denise Maloney, and Ms. Maloney is the director of Amory Enterprises. On the left we have Ms. Zovier Knight, and she is the operations manager for Amory Enterprises, in particular the Amory Bakery. And my far right is Chef Augustine Huggins, the great chef. And Chef Augustine has been providing all the tasty meals at the Amory Bakery, also at Palms Court Gardens. So I want to welcome you all here as well. And they are, of course, sporting or modeling the masks, one in white, one in black, and the other in burgundy. Yeah? But the other thing that we plan to do, beginning on the 4th of October, we would like to start a food bank. I got that will and desire to help after someone wrote me on Facebook and told me that, she says, thank you, Mr. Amory, thank you for your assistance in the past. I didn't remember assisting her, but obviously I did. And she says, I will not lie to you. I looked in my cupboard this morning and my cupboard is empty. And that really touched me. So I assisted her. I was happy to assist her. As I walked through the streets of Bastille and the whole country, I know a lot of people are having serious economic issues, financial issues at this time. Whether you're a small business or a big business, whether you're single or a married couple, everyone is having some serious issues financially, economically, all businesses. And therefore, Amory Enterprises, we have our issues as well. We have our debt to pay, and we will pay our debts. But I think one of our debts is to show appreciation for our customers who have been with us over the past 71 years. No business would ever succeed without a customer, and therefore we want to show our appreciation, not necessarily giving back, but we want to just show our appreciation for their support, because your support is what helps us to support you. The more you support us, the more we can do for the community. So today, I'd like to announce that we will start in a food bank on October 4th, that will be a Sunday, and continuing until the end of the year, until the end of December 27th, also a Sunday. These meals really are designed or being given to, or should be given to, the persons who are mostly in need. So I'd like to ask the ones who are not affected, the ones who have jobs and who don't need a meal, they can do one or two things. They can donate as well to persons who need it. Right now we have a program where we are giving half price on every product after 5 o'clock until closing time. If you buy 5 products, you get an extra 5 free. If you buy 10 bags of hamburgers, you get 10 bags free. Whatever you buy, we match it. So those of you who can afford, I urge you, yes, you can buy the hamburgers, buy the hot dogs, buy the sliced bread. But if you don't need the extra, give it to your neighbor, give it to a friend, give it to a family member. In regards to the meals, we'll be giving out tickets beginning on the 26th of this month, September, and continuing until they finish. We will be given first priority. We'll give to the churches. We'll have a set number we'll give to the churches who are in need, and these tickets will be color coded. So beginning the 26th, we'll have a particular color, and the following week will be another color. Those tickets that were not used, for example, on the 4th of October, cannot be used on the 11th. They will not be valid. So if you got a ticket during that week and you can't use it, I would suggest you give it to someone who can use it. The other big announcement I'd like to make is I spoke with our chefs, Chef Oscar and Chef Augustine, with a challenge to make 5,000 meals on one day. It's a big challenge. I know they can do it because about 2 weeks ago, when we reopened our business in Bastille, the former Ribs and Rolls, now called Amory Cafe, they made a little over 1,000 meals every day for 2 days. So I believe, I'm trusting that what you all say you can do, you will be committed and you will supply 5,000 meals. It's a big challenge, but we would like NEMA to verify that there were actually 5,000 meals, and hopefully before the end of the year, another business I challenge other business to do more, do 5,001, for example, okay? I want someone to break that record. So we will be organizing that on the 15th November, which is actually my birthday. It happens to fall on a Sunday. And throughout the years, I really never liked receiving gifts. I always like to give. So on my birthday this year, I want to give, but give big. Something that I can remember, something that the community will remember, and something that my family, my son, will remember, and that he too could continue to give. Because I have given, because my parents, especially my father, who started the business, have been known to be giving back to the community. So therefore, this has been done for him and for my family in general, especially my brother, who have worked with me throughout these years. So thank you very much, and God bless everyone. Thank you. Mr. Samuel, I'd like to officially hand over the buckets. Here we have 532, which will be going to Nevis, and 1,032 to St. Kitts. Then we have the masks. We have here we have 400 of these masks will be donated to Nevis and 800 to St. Kitts. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon all, and thank you for joining us. And again, I want to commend Amory Enterprise and Mr. Amory and his team for their continued support. We continue to see the corporate partnership with our business sector, in particular Amory Enterprise, for these donations of masks and also the buckets, which will come in handy. Once the country becomes under threat of any type of cyclonic activity, which we are susceptible for in our geographical location, these vital relief supplies are needed. Mr. Amory engaged me a few weeks ago, and today we are seeing Mr. Amory deliver on his word of commitment to ensuring that we get some relief supplies to support our response, well, our preparedness and response, and also as we continue to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, we see that this partnership with Amory Enterprise, American Bakery Enterprise, continues to bear fruit for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as it regards to non-pharmaceutical measures that we need in the wearing of masks. Something that is needed for those who don't have. So, Mr. Amory, again, this corporate partnership is what will make us resilient going forward in the fight against this pandemic and our ability as a country to be able to resist the impact of any type of cyclonic activities such as hurricanes, tropical storm, etc. So thank you again, and we look forward to a continued partnership with you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind donation, Mr. Amory. I now invite the representative from Health Plus Pharmacy, Ms. Beverly Mayers, to make a donation.
Good afternoon to all. The management and staff of Health Plus Pharmacy would like to donate this 7L ULV disinfectant fogger to the COVID-19 task force. We feel encouraged by the work done by the COVID-19 COVID-19 task force in keeping the Federation safe from this pandemic and would like to support their efforts with this donation. As the government moves to open our borders in the near future, this device can be used to disinfect port entry, hospitals, schools, and restaurants. It can save manpower and disinfect large areas in a short space of time. Once the task force finds this useful, we'll be more than happy to donate additional units. Once again, we would like to congratulate the task force for their excellent work and wish them all the best as they continue to keep the nation safe. I thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Ministry of Health and the COVID-19 Task Force, I would like to thank Health Plus for their kind donation of this electric sprayer, or what is termed a disinfectant electric fogger. The article I read says that it can kill up to 99% of germs and viruses. And yes, it would come in handy in terms of when we are in a second wave of COVID-19 infections. And apparently, I think it can be utilized in terms of disinfecting, seating materials that are harder to clean. Yeah, and so we are very thankful for this kind donation. Again, on behalf of the Ministry of Health and the COVID-19 Task Force, we want to say thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to Health Plus Pharmacy. I now invite the Director of the Early Childhood Unit, Ms. Kimona Brown, to address us. Ms. Brown.
A pleasant afternoon to all listening and viewing. As Director of the Early Childhood Development Unit, I will seek to update you on some very important matters regarding the standards and expectations for reopening and registering early childhood facilities. Let me begin with heartfelt commendations to all the public and private nurseries, preschools, and daycare centers that worked tirelessly to meet the COVID-19 protocols and the minimum standards of service for the early childhood sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. I am happy to report that in Nevis, 5 public centers and 19 private centers have been granted approval for reopening their facilities under COVID-19 guidelines. In St. Kitts, 15 public centers and 55 private centers have attained approval to operate their businesses thus far. The management of these facilities must be commended for demonstrating that they care to manage their centers in a manner that protects the health and safety of everyone who interacts with them. Please note that there are ongoing assessments to have all outstanding facilities comply with the protocols and standards for the sector. We hope that these centers will be granted approval shortly so that they are given the opportunity to offer excellent service of care for young children. Given the situation that not all centers have reopened, the public must be made aware of what they can do to verify whether a facility has been granted approval for reopening. Consequently, you, the public, should look for the posting of a certificate of approval for the center. All centers certified to reopen are required to post their certificate of approval in a conspicuous point upon entry to the facility. Presently, we observed a few unregistered persons advertising and offering early childhood services to the public. Truthfully, the Early Childhood Development Unit welcome additional spaces to meet the high demand of accommodating young children in the sector. However, standards can be broken down and threaten the safety and well-being of our children when we fail to meet standards and guidelines of service. Therefore, I encourage all unregistered persons to visit the Early Childhood Development Unit to begin the process of registration and approval. The Early Childhood Development Unit and the Ministry of Education welcome you and ask that you come speedily to us. You can contact the Early Childhood Development Unit at telephone number 466-2810 or 465-2369. I will seek to summarize the registration process for all persons interested in operating an early childhood facility. 1. All persons desiring to operate an early childhood facility must first apply to the Early Childhood Development Unit. 2. All applicants will be interviewed to ascertain the suitability of the applicant to operate an early childhood development center. 3. If deemed suitable, an appointment can be made to have the proposed site inspected, at which time the early childhood officers will advise on the suitability of the premises for an early childhood service and its operating capacity. 4. If a new building is to be constructed, advice will also be given on this. 5. If a proposed center is to be located in the applicant's home, checks will be made on each person of that household, including regular visitors to the home. Findings will determine availability to operate. Persons wishing to obtain more information, inquiries should be made at the Early Childhood Development Unit for an appointed interview. The issue of space at an early childhood facility. The utilization of space at an early childhood facility is a very important consideration in offering quality service. As such, each center must be measured and assigned a maximum number of children it can serve. Therefore, we are working to have each approved facility display the specified center maximum capacity in a conspicuous point of entry to the facility. This is one of a set of minimum standards that are best practices for monitoring standards throughout the Eastern Caribbean. These standards are supported by OECS and UNICEF. There are other major considerations which include the following. 1. A learning environment which is with sufficient indoor space, furniture for routine care, play, and learning, furnishings for relaxation and comfort, and an organized room arrangement for play. 2. A basic daily schedule which is familiar to the children. This schedule would include free play time, group time, nature and science, dramatic play, the use of ICTs appropriate for the children's age, promoting acceptance of diversity, discipline and guidance, staff-child interactions, health and safety practices, records of work and children's development progress, supporting policies and procedures, and opportunities for professional growth of all staff. A message to all early childhood care providers as it relates to minimum standards. The early childhood care and education minimum standards have been developed to provide assurance of a consistent level of quality in the provision of early childhood care and education services, and to ensure a consistent national approach to registration and inspection. The minimum standards have been developed in this context and aim to clarify the requirements contained in the legislation. Minimum standards are the minimum level of service that has to be provided in order to be registered with the Early Childhood Development Unit and meet the inspection standards. Whilst there may be no specific law underpinning some of the standards, it is important to understand that the Early Childhood Development Unit has the legal right to set standards for these services in order for a provider to be registered. In setting these minimum standards, the objective is to raise the quality of registered child care provision. In conclusion, it must be noted that many centers made huge efforts to meet the protocols and standards for reopening. While this is commendable, all managers must be cautious in maintaining consistency. You are therefore encouraged to continue to abide by the stipulated guidelines and protocols laid out in the COVID-19 regulations. Please note that failure to comply may result in the immediate withdrawal of the approved permission to operate. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown of the Early Childhood Unit Director. I now invite Superintendent Cromwell Henry, Divisional Commander for District A, to give us his report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, and a pleasant good afternoon to all listening to this broadcast by whatever means. Having listened to Ms. Brown on the issue of the Early Childhood Development Unit and their concerns in the sector, I would address my attention to that as well. I would have done so on a previous occasion, earlier, I think it's sometime in the month of August, and it's worth repeating because some of the issues raised at that time still exist. Again, it has been brought to our attention that persons are operating child daycare centers without the approval of the Ministry of Education. We want to remind persons that in addition to the Education Act and its regulations, the COVID-19 emergency regulation sets out the guidelines and conditions under which these centers can operate. Regulation 9.2 states, all private educational places of instruction shall apply to the Ministry of Education for approval for reopening in the form set out in Schedule 2. A privately run early childhood education center that applies to the Ministry of Education to reopen shall comply with the minimum standards set out in the third schedule. And this schedule speaks to the protocols that will guide the operations of these businesses, protocols such as the requirements for the wearing of masks by parents, general hygiene, food preparation, physical distancing, among other things. Remember, these guidelines and protocols are intended to prevent the spread of the disease and not to create hardships for the owners. Bearing in mind that the children at this age may be particularly vulnerable. The National COVID Task Force is committed to working closely with the Ministry of Education and its Early Childhood Unit to ensure high standards are achieved and maintained in this sector. We therefore urge the fullest cooperation of all concerned, especially parents, who can assist by ensuring that the center where you are taking your child or children has been approved to operate and it is doing so safely. Operators are required to display their certificate of inspection. Ms. Brown would have alluded to that earlier. And it must be displayed in a conspicuous place on the premises. Again, we urge the support of all concerned as we strive to ensure the health of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Henry. I now invite our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, to present us with the Health Emergency Operations Center Health Report. Dr. Laws.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and again a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. This afternoon, September the 23rd, 2020, it's my task, as per usual, to share with you the Health Emergency Operating Centers Situation Report. The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis would have reported a total of 19 confirmed cases of COVID-19. 17 of these cases would have recovered, and at present we only have 2 active cases. Let's now look at the Caribbean region. Within the CARICOM member states in the Caribbean region, the 206,784 confirmed cases of COVID. Almost 120,000 of these would have recovered, and the death toll continues to be quite low in the Caribbean region, and it stands at 3,902. Now let's look at some of these CARICOM member states a little more closely, and let's see what's happening in our sister islands. So in Anguilla, they would have confirmed or reported 3 cases, Montserrat 13, Grenada 24, Dominica 25, St. Lucia 27, St. Vincent and the Grenadines 64 cases confirmed, Antigua and Barbuda would have reported 96 confirmed cases, Barbados 189, and then the bigger territories, for example, Trinidad and Tobago, would have reported over 3,900 cases. Jamaica would have reported over 5,270 cases. So this just gives you a picture as to what's happening within the CARICOM member states. Yesterday, if any of us would have tuned into CNN, it was quite a bit of activity there in terms of noting that the United States of America would have passed the 200,000 mark in terms of total number of deaths attributed to COVID-19, and this occurred yesterday. Today, the death toll is 201,120 in the United States of America alone, with over 6 million, or rather almost 7 million confirmed cases in the United States. What's happening globally? Based on the data coming out of the World Health Organization, there are well over 31,375,000 persons confirmed with COVID-19 globally, and the global or international death toll stands at 966,399, almost 100,000, almost 1 million, sorry. Now, in St. Kitts and Nevis, a total of 2,205 persons have been tested so far, and again, we continue to accept our nationals who request to come home. To date, between April the 24th and present, a total of 407 nationals would have returned to the Federation. At present, we have 49 such persons in government-designated quarantine and 2 persons in isolation. Okay, so this afternoon we would have received a flight. A flight would have come in, a charter would have come in from Miami with 116 persons for the Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine. In another couple of days, we are expecting another charter from San Juan with an additional 8 persons. And so this would be the 3rd batch of students coming into the Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine. And I just want to remind you of the procedure or the methodology that we are following. And so these students, they would have received their pre-arrival RT-PCR test in Miami. They would have been sampled on Monday. The results would have been returned, all negative, and then they would have arrived in country. They will be tested upon arrival, and so the Ministry of Health has a team on campus awaiting their arrival for testing. So they will receive a test upon arrival. They will go into compulsory quarantine for a total of 14 days on the RUSVM campus, and then on day 14 of quarantine they will be tested again, and it's only if they would have gotten back a negative RT-PCR test would they be officially discharged from quarantine and be allowed to integrate into the general population within the Federation. Okay, and so there was a media release, official media release coming out of the CARICOM Heads of Governments meeting on Friday, the 11th of September. And the heads of government of CARICOM, including our own Prime Minister, would have agreed in principle to a regional travel bubble. However, we must note that the country, our borders, the Federation's borders remain closed. And so the implementation date, as announced in that release, does not apply to the Federation because our borders are still closed. The CARICOM Heads of Government agreed to the recommendations made by the Caribbean Public Health Agency regarding how this Caribbean bubble or CARICOM bubble can and will operate. And so some of the eligibility, I'm sharing with you some of the eligibility criteria for countries to participate in this CARICOM bubble. To begin with, only those territories where there are no reported COVID-19 cases or those territories with low risk. In other words, meaning only those territories that meet this criteria whereby there is a COVID-19 case notification rate of less than 20 new cases per 100,000 population within the last 14-day period. So only territories in these categories will be eligible to be a part of this CARICOM bubble. And also the territories must have adequate quarantine and isolation sites for persons who are asymptomatic or mildly affected by COVID-19, and these facilities must be separate from the facilities that are designated for visitors and tourists. The islands must have adequate resources to treat severe and critical cases, and these islands must each have similar pre-arrival screening requirements and health screening procedures on arrival at the airports. And there must be a centralized posting or communication platform or website, national website, where anyone can find the requirements for the countries within the CARICOM bubble. So these are just some of the eligibility criteria for countries to be included in this CARICOM bubble. Travelers from countries within the bubble would be allowed entry into another territory within the bubble without being subjected to having a pre-arrival PCR test. Travelers from countries within the bubble would also be allowed entry without undergoing quarantine restrictions. So this is the whole purpose of creating this CARICOM bubble. However, travelers will be subjected to screening upon arrival in the particular territory within the bubble, the territory they are visiting. And please note that the travelers should have been resident in a bubble country or should not have traveled to a country outside the bubble for at least 14 to 21 days prior to the date of travel. So that's important. So in other words, you couldn't have come in from New York, a high-risk, hotspot, into one of the CARICOM countries that is included in the bubble under 14 days and be expected to move freely amongst within the other countries in the bubble. It was agreed that initially the following countries will be a part of this CARICOM bubble as they meet the criteria I would have described. And these territories include Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. However, it was confirmed that as at yesterday, September the 22nd, only 4 of these territories, and I'll name them, have commenced operating the travel bubble. In other words, these 4 territories, they have open borders, and so this CARICOM bubble has been operationalized in these 4 territories. And these 4 territories are Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. And as I said before, our borders remain closed, and so our implementation date automatically is postponed because our borders remain closed. All right, and so I also want to talk a little bit about border security, and I'm thinking that this requires an all-of-society approach. That is, I think each and every one of us, we have a responsibility as individuals and collectively in terms of securing our borders. I don't think we can leave it up to the Coast Guard alone and the security forces. So if you live in the Connery area, the Keys area, Dieppe Bay area, Palmetto Point, Sandy Point, if 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, you see a little tugboat coming on shore and occupied with potentially illegal immigrants, it's your responsibility to alert your neighbors, alert the community, alert the authorities. Because the last thing we want is for illegal immigrants from neighboring islands who may have been exposed to the virus coming ashore and integrating illegally into our communities and being responsible for an outbreak without our even knowing. And so we each have a responsibility as individuals and collectively in terms of securing our borders. Okay, I want to just remind us about the prevention and control measures. We can't repeat them enough. wearing our face mask, and yes, it's very, very important because we now have, well, we have two active cases, but we are not sure if there aren't any more cases out there. And so you need to continue with the control and prevention and control measures so that you are actively and intentionally reducing your risk to the virus. And these include wearing of the face mask. We have seen pictures circulating of events whereby persons have been, attending functions, massive crowds, and individuals were without face masks. And so we all have a responsibility to wear our face mask when interacting with persons in public spaces. Hand hygiene is very important. Sanitation, very, very important. Schools are now open, so this is important even in the school setting. Physical distancing, maintaining an adequate space or distance of at least 1 meter, 3.3 feet between yourselves and others when in public spaces. Social distancing, social distancing, social distancing. I think we all have a responsibility to avoid massive crowds. Persons are, calling on, those of us in positions to be held responsible for persons attending functions where there are massive crowds. And my position is that we all, as individuals and collectively, we have a responsibility to avoid massive crowds. We all have that responsibility. So let us remember the COVID-19 prevention and control measures that have brought us to this point, and these are the measures that to date we have to depend on because we are still awaiting an effective treatment for COVID-19, and we are still awaiting a vaccine that is being proven to prevent this disease. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws, our Chief Medical Officer. I now invite Mr. Abdias Samuel, the Chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force and National Disaster Coordinator, to present us with his report. Mr. Samuel.
Pleasant good afternoon again to all of our listeners and viewers. This afternoon we continue with our briefing, and again I want to start my presentation this good afternoon or good evening with speaking about the necessary non-pharmaceutical measures in terms of preventing or slowing down the spread of the coronavirus or COVID-19. Again, we cannot overly emphasize the use of face masks. I must say we are seeing an improvement in the general public in terms of wearing of the face mask. I think we have a long way to go, and I'm encouraging our citizens, residents, and visitors to continue to wear your face mask as prescribed by the regulation. Social distancing. It is very important for you to exercise caution and do your best to exercise your civil responsibility in avoiding crowded areas. It's very critical, it's very important, and we are seeing signs of persons being irresponsible in their behaviors as it regards to the overcrowding and joining large crowd, what we say mass gathering. Hand hygiene, touching of frequent surfaces such as doorknobs, door handles, and other surfaces that you may touch frequent, and you share these surfaces with other individuals. We are asking you to continue to exercise the precaution that is therefore advised by the health professional to continue to wash your hand and do so within a 20-second space. Now, dear citizens and residents, let's be mindful that our borders will be open, and we are doing our best to inculcate a behavioral change towards preparing you and the country for the opening of the borders. And the only thing that we have to make us a resilient country, nation, and people is by exercising some of these measures, putting them into place. And we cannot overly emphasize these things. We cannot say it enough. So again, I'm appealing to everyone to continue with these measures. The regulations are still in existence. Persons are asking me, yes, the regulations are still in existence. The regulations go up to the 26th, I think, which is Saturday coming. And by the 26th, there should be a new iterations of new regulations. So again, I am encouraging the business sector, I am encouraging citizens and everyone to continue to adhere to the regulations. Continue to wear your face mask outdoors. And there's a lot of questions people are asking. For your own protection, please do your best to wear your mask. The hand washing and sanitization protocols, the schedule is still in existence. So please do your best to continue, in particular the business places which the compliance task force are visiting. I'm asking persons to do your best in ensuring you have the proper substances to apply to persons' hands. We have been receiving a lot of complaints whereby persons are not using the proper substances. For example, persons are diluting the alcohol-based substances that should be used, and in some instances we have had reports whereby persons are using plain water. You should do your best not to deceive the general public. When you deceive the general public in these manner, you are actually making them vulnerable. So I am appealing to businesses. The compliance task force are going to be coming out and coming out in the numbers, and they do mean business. And if you are non-compliant, then the necessary actions will be taken against your business or your person. The compliance process. So the compliance task force that has been trained and deployed to be operational continues to do their work. So the compliance task force will be visiting many business places, whether it be the public sector, private sector, anyone in our society, they will be visiting you. They will be going around and enforcing the emergency COVID-19 regulations. So if you don't have a copy of the regulations, please go to the necessary website and download a copy and learn your COVID-19 regulations. It's critical, in particular the business places. Again, we already went through the phase of sensitizing you. We went through the phase of helping you by advising you what should be done. We are now in the phase of enforcement. No longer we are going to accept some of the mediocre standards that have been exercised by some of you. Persons are basically dropping their guards and thinking that we are back to normal, so there is no need for the signs, there is no need for social distancing, there is no need for social distancing, there is no need for any type of protocols, because St. Kitts and Nevis is back to normal. That is far beyond the truth, and I am appealing to you to comply by the regulations, or otherwise the necessary actions will be taken to enforce these regulations. I am appealing to one and all to please comply with the compliance task force once they come and visit. Please do not obstruct the compliance task force. Again, please do not obstruct the compliance task force when they are doing the inspections. If you have any challenges with the compliance task force, feel free to contact the Commissioner of Police, feel free to contact my office and lodge your complaint. We have been receiving a number of applications for pre-approved quarantine sites on St. Kitts and Nevis. This is the process. Let me explain it again. One, you will go online on the covid-19.gov.kn website. You will see the form. So you will see there's a fillable form and there's a form that you can download. The downloaded form, along with any supporting document, can be emailed to the COVID-19 Task Force at gov.kn email address. Again, I repeat, you email supporting documents and the fillable form to the COVID-19 Task Force at gov.kn. For the fillable form, once you have completed all the fields, all you have to do is press submit. Step 3, the Compliance Task Force will then respond to you and set up a date for the property to be inspected. Once the property has been inspected, you are then asked to verify the pre-approved security for 24/7 monitoring at the property, and this will be prescribed by the Office of the Commissioner of Police. Step 5, the criteria will be reviewed along with the submission and inspection made, and a decision will be arrived whether you qualify for pre-approved quarantine as a pre-approved quarantine site. Once the approval is given, then you will sign the agreement for the terms and conditions outlined for pre-approved quarantine. Those are the 6 steps that are applicable for persons wishing to apply for a pre-approved quarantine site. If you have any further queries regarding this, please send an email to the COVID-19 Task Force at gov.kn or call Mr. Juson Garden at 762-0238. NEMA is gearing up for the celebration of the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, and during this time we will be celebrating a week of activities from the 11th to the 16th of October 2020. I am appealing to the general public to support this week of activities, and we will provide you with more details at a later date. We continue to monitor the activities in the Atlantic as we are still in the peak of the hurricane season. Thanks be to God that the season thus far, let me not speak too quickly, has been merciful on us, and we continue to pray for such mercies to be bestowed upon us until the season is over. However, I am appealing to persons to use this opportunity in peacetime, that we are not impacted or affected, to continue to review your plans, and if you don't have plans, develop plans and take the necessary measures to safeguard your property, yourselves, and your livelihoods. We have now moved on to the Greek alphabet, as the regular alphabet has already been exhausted with names of storms. So now we are in the beta. We have basically used alpha and beta, and any further storms that may develop will now go into the name of gamma. So here you have a list of the remaining names, the Greek alphabet for storm names going forward until the hurricane season ends. And then you have the weather update for Wednesday 23rd, and which is valid until tomorrow morning 8 a.m. I want to take this opportunity to again appeal to the general public that we are preparing to open the borders, and we need you to exercise all necessary and practicable precaution in terms of the non-pharmaceutical measures. As Dr. Law said, we cannot overemphasize or we cannot repeat it enough. The general public should also be aware that presently there is a request by the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line for two cruise ships that are seeking harbor Safe harbor at the Port Zante Pier here in St. Kitts. We are awaiting the decision of the Cabinet whether it will be approved or not approved for the arrival of these vessels. I am informed that the vessels are the Vision of the Seas and Brilliance of the Seas that are seeking safe harbor in our ports in St. Kitts. The vessels should be if approved, arriving sometime later this week. Again, I am appealing to the general public to take note of the information provided. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. We now come to the question and answer segment, and the first question is, should there be an option when taking one's temperature? Should there be an option, whether it be on the forehead or on the wrist? Dr. Laws.
That's a very good question, Mr. Williams. Should there be an option? And in life, it's nice when we have options. And I would love to say, yes, there should be. But the thing is that the infrared thermometers that we would have procured in the public system, they were specifically designed, most of them that is, they were specifically designed to take the temperature at the forehead. And if an instrument was specifically designed to take the temperature at that specific site, and if it was approved, and they have been approved for same, it's not advised for you to use it to take the temperature at another site. And so yes, if the various institutions were to invest in another set of infrared thermometers specifically designed to take temperature at the wrist, well, of course. Yes? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laws. This other question, please explain why permission is being given to persons to conduct events that attract massive crowds. And if permission is not granted, why are these events not closed down? Are these events visited by the Compliance Task Force? Superintendent.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Williams. Why are these events that attract large crowds given permission to go on? Now, we've always heard that we have to learn to live with COVID. Life still has to go on. We just need to make some adjustments. These events, we cannot shut down all entertainment permanently, and so we grant permission with certain guidelines, certain stipulations. One of the main considerations in granting permission for these events is the number of persons in attendance and the size of the venue where the event would be held. And once we've determined that the venue is a particular size, we would recommend the number of persons. What we've seen happening is that persons would accept the conditions and then violate the terms and conditions given. Now you would ask, well, why not shut down the event? Again, that is a decision for the police on the ground. He would have to make, whether you shut down the event and cause some public disturbance that you can't control, or you take other measures. for the future. And so we regret that these things have to happen, and we continue to admonish our people to take the virus serious, realizing that it is spread through contact, and one of the main means of preventing its spread is distancing, social and physical distancing, the wearing of masks, and the hand sanitization. And once we grant permission for these events, these are the main conditions that we stipulate. We know it is difficult for the masks and the social distancing together, but you must be able to at least do one. Either have on the mask, or if you do not wear any mask, keep your distance. But in all, your hands must be clean, your area around you must be sanitized, and that is the responsibility of the organizers. So again, we appeal to organizers of these events. Should you be granted permission, again, please remember that you have an obligation to protect your patrons and ensure that the protocols are complied with.
And I just want to add something to support what was just said, in that large is relative. It all depends on the square footage of the place. And we also know if an event is being held in an open air, you can accommodate more persons safely, as opposed to if it was held in an enclosed space. In this fight against COVID-19, however, we have spoken all the time about our individual and collective responsibilities. And we've said this is the first time in history that the singular action of one person can have far-reaching consequences for everyone else. When the organizers come before the task force, they come and they agree to stick to certain protocols and procedures. And then sometimes on the weekends, we see people circulating photos where there is no evidence of any social distancing at all. And a lot of the blame is being placed at the foot of the task force. Now, we all have to be responsible, and I believe that we are responsible also for what happens, but you individually, you are also responsible. And so if there's an event and it was supposed to be only 100 persons, and you get in there and you realize that the place is overcrowded, you have a responsibility to also decide you're not going to go in there. But I want to make an appeal to the organizers, because when the place was closed down, these persons came to us begging for us to start generating economic activity, asking for us to generate activity so the entertainers, etc., can make a living. And if you're given an opportunity, we need to make sure that we can live safely within COVID-19 and stick to the rules and the regulations, because it's not easy for the police to just show up at a place, see 500 persons and determine that they're going to pull the plug right away. They would have to make sure that they have the necessary security persons in place, because one don't want to stop the party and then you have a stampede and people are injured. And so we need to do this cautiously. So hopefully going forward, as he said, we will learn to live with COVID-19 and we can have these events and still do it safely. Thank you.
I just want to add something to what was said by both Superintendent Henry and Dr. Wilkinson, which is we are reviewing the protocols. Some new protocols have been developed for the entertainment sector, and these protocols would be in the next iteration of the regulations. And to all promoters, I'm sending you a strong message. We are going to make it a little more difficult in terms of the penalties that are going to be applicable to you if you violate the terms and conditions. As Dr. Wilkinson said, these terms and conditions are agreed upon, and on the day of the event, you are seeing that the terms and conditions basically are flushed away. And then you see disorganized and irresponsible actions and behaviors by individuals attending these events. We are looking into increasing fines against promoters. So promoters, you will be responsible for the actions of the patrons, and we are also looking at other measures of fines or any other applicable regulations, regulatory measures that need to be applied to you in order to have full compliance. Because if we say to you 300 and you end up with 900, whether we get in a lot of excuses that persons entered some other way, persons did this and did that. That has nothing to do with us, the task force. That has to do with the responsibility of the promoter. Secondly, the question was asked about the compliance team. Hence, we have finished the training with the compliance officers, and from now on, compliance officers will be at these events, and the compliance officers will guide the protocols and terms and conditions that have been placed before these promoters in order for them to operate. And once there is violation, then there will be implications. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for that question that generated so many responses. It shows then that it is one that is on people's minds and one that is extremely important in how we conduct our affairs in this new environment in which we find ourselves. That brings us to the end of today's NEOC COVID-19 weekly briefing. I want to thank you for all of your questions. I do hope that they were answered in the way that you would have liked them to be answered. If not, we have other briefings in which you can ask questions. I do want to acknowledge the Minister of Health, the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, for joining us for today's briefing. I want to thank, in a very special way, the two persons who donated to the COVID-19 response, Mr. Ernest Amory and Ms. Beverly Meyers of Health Plus Pharmacy. Additionally, the director of the Early Childhood Unit, Ms. Kimona Brown, who shared with us today, Superintendent Cromwell Henry, who is always here, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Hazel Laws, and Mr. Abdia Samuel, the chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force and National Disaster Coordinator. We also thank Mrs. Christmas Jacobs. As we said, today is the United Nations recognized day, International Day of Sign Languages. And of course, Mrs. Christmas Jacobs provides a very important service, that of sign languages. I did not even know that collectively that the deaf use more than 300 different sign languages. That is rather amazing. 300 different sign languages. So just so we have different spoken languages, there are different sign languages. That's sign languages. Yes. Sign languages. Right, so thank you. Mrs. Christmas Jakes. We continue to thank the media as well for partnering with us for these briefings and also for the dissemination of information that is timely, accurate and relevant with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you to all of you for joining us today for this briefing. Next week, we will be back on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Take care.
Is on.